beautiful auditorium.
Good morning. I'm Jen White, host of 1A from WAMU and NPR. Really excited to be here to talk about artificial intelligence. Technology and increasingly AI is an inescapable part of our lives. It can organize our calendars, write our emails, code our websites, track our sleeps, monitor our heart rate, show us the fastest routes to get where we're going, and handle other everyday tasks. Now, AI founders promise us that the technology will give us more time to do the things we want to do and less friction. But what do we trade when we outsource more of our thinking to machines? Today, we're going to talk about the psychological and biological trade-offs we make when AI handles a greater share of our lives, but also some of the possibilities. With us today, we have Manoush Zomorodi. She's an author, journalist, and host of NPR's TED Radio Hour. Her latest book is called Body Electric: The Hidden Health Costs of the Digital Age and New Science to Reclaim Your Well-Being. Next to her, we have Joanna Stern. She's the founder of the tech media company New Things. She's also the chief technology analyst at NBC News and the author of I Am Not a Robot: My Year of Using AI to Do Almost Everything. And then Dr. Fanny Elahi. She's a physician, scientist, and associate professor in the departments of neurology, neuroscience, pathology, molecular and cell-based medicine, and artificial intelligence and human health at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. And I just want to mention there will be a book signing for Manoush and Joanna's books after this session, so make sure to grab them. They're both really good reads.
Jen.
You're welcome. So first, I just want to get a sense of how each of you are using AI in your everyday lives. Dr. Elahi.
I do a lot of molecular research, and in that, there's a ton of data. So how we used to do science was one hypothesis at a time, design an experiment, get your answer, yes, no, move on to the next. And we're at an unprecedented time where we can actually gather what we call unbiased data and ask the question for it to find the patterns and generate hypotheses that then we go back and sort of test in a mechanistic fashion. So I use it in that way, and also starting to use it for human phenotyping. So I work on neurodegenerative diseases. It's about loss of function. And our sense of what is lost depends on who that person was. So I think as we advance, there's going to be a baseline for human beings that is going to be much more accurate than what we have ever done. And we will detect change in the function of that person, depending on who they were and what they could do. So I think it's really just rapidly evolving, frankly.
Manoush, what about you? How are you using it in your life and work?
Oh, yes, I'm doing gene analysis. No, guys, I'm using LLMs, and I'm like trying them all out. And I know my daughter the other day came in. She's like, "Oh no, you're using ChatGPT again. You know you're destroying my entire generation." And I was like, "You're right." Totally shamed me. But then when I talk to researchers who are doing extraordinary work and really changing the future of how we care for ourselves and our families, I'm just blown away by it. So I'm really, for me, I'm trying to like go into this balance. I'm thinking of it as like Goldilocks mode, right? Which is like not too much. I'm not a Luddite though, because I do find it really fascinating and interesting, and I want to understand how it works. And I know LLMs are just one small part, large language models that help, create lots of text. But I will share my favorite use has been I created an advisory board for myself where I have a top-notch chief financial officer. I have an amazing therapist who just, has been in the business for a long time. I have my mentor, who is a guy, of course it's a guy, who owns a newspaper from decades, who really reminds me about my journalistic integrity. And I have a chief marketing officer, because you got to be on social media these days. So they're really helpful. They advise me on things. Do I use their advice? But like, I can't afford to have that. So it just sparks my brain. It gets me thinking. I also just like, it feels fun, like I can, they get me thinking, what questions do I have if I can indulge myself? And I can. But my daughter is right. The environmental costs are indeed real. I'm trying. It's hard. We're in this middle area, I think.
Seeking balance.
Yeah.
Joanna, for your book, you said, balance be damned. I'm going all in on AI. And you just really went in on using it in every aspect of your life. First, what made you want to do this?
Insanity. I think, that's everyone's a little insane. And so if you're going to try AI, you got to try it for a year in all parts of your life. This was the vow I made at the beginning of 2025. I'm all in on AI. Every problem, every issue I have this year, I'm going to go first to AI. And so, yes, insanity, but also in part, mostly in part, to help people understand what the future is, what's coming. This was a time where we were just hearing, as I say, the hyperbole maxing of the tech industry, that AI is going to change everything in our lives, medical, transportation, education, and it's going to be for the better, of course. And so I wanted to put that to the test. And so, yes, I have not done this genome editing and advanced science. I mean, AI did pick out my outfit today, so I think that's very advanced. But I used everything, as Manoush was saying, from AI therapists, AI financial advisors, but also took it beyond just the large language models and generative AI and tested humanoid robots and self-driving cars, and also a lot in the medical field that's coming that is, again, not just generative AI.
So give us a bit of a gut check then. You mentioned the promises tech companies make to us about what AI can do. What did you learn AI is good at and what it's not so good at right now?
Well, it's a very large scale. Right now, AI is great at taking our data and helping us make sense of it. On a personal level, it can do amazing things of taking the data that it has. And AI is really right now and always only as good as the data it has. And we're going to see lots of progress, especially in our personal data. Apple has a new Siri coming out in the fall. I've been testing it. And Apple has access to massive amounts of our personal data. So AI being able to find that text message, explain something our kids did that we forgot about in a text message, or these things, it's going to be incredible. Where we haven't seen, and there's a long, long ways to go, especially in physical AI, is taking some of this data and really being proactive, doing things on our behalf. Now, we are seeing that right now with agents, and we have also obviously seen this really in the world of self-driving cars, right? But taking that data to do multi-step processes, both in a digital space and in a physical space, we have a long way to go.
Manoush, your book really focuses on the way the use of AI is changing how our bodies function.
Yep.
And I'd love for you to explain what you're seeing, because we'll get to the science and where the promise is, but I want us to understand, when we really go all in on AI, what's happening to us.
Yeah, so what I've been doing over the last 15 years is sort of looking at these very human moments where you realize that tech has fundamentally changed something about you. So for me, the first one was about this idea that I was like, I'm never bored anymore. I mean, that was 15 years ago, 10 years ago. But that idea that, I could look at my phone and be productive when I used to just wait in line, and sort of look at the sky. And that sort of got me thinking about what is the role of boredom in our lives? How does it interact with something called mind wandering, which ignites a certain network in our brain, which is actually responsible for some of our most original thinking and problem solving and creativity. So what I've done more recently is, it was 2023 when we came out of the pandemic, but my life was still all on screens. And I just felt so tired all the time. Like I just had this, I'd close my laptop at the end of the day and feel like all I could do was crawl over to the couch to scroll on my phone. You're laughing because you felt it, right?
Feel a little attacked.
Yeah. Well, so I just wanted to understand, what was going on in my body that made this feel so physical? Because I think we've heard a lot about the effects of social media or too much screen time on our mental health, but I really wanted to understand what was going on in my body. So what I ended up doing was finding research, a Columbia University researcher, physiologist named Keith Diaz, who had discovered the minimum amount of movement that the human body needs. He was setting the bar extremely low so that our sedentary screen-filled lives don't kill us. And he had found that 5 minutes of gentle movement for every half hour of sedentary stretches had outsized benefits. It slashed people's blood pressure, their glucose levels. It increased their mood, their ability to focus, lowered fatigue. And as he explained it to me, it's a physiological function. When we sit, we kink our arteries, we don't get enough oxygen and glucose, our muscles can't contract and push it up to the brain. So really, this is a cognitive effect of sitting all day as well. And so when we say, I can't focus, well, maybe you just need to get up and take a walk. So Keith and I, Columbia and NPR partnered, and we did a clinical trial that was actually published on Tuesday with 20,000 listeners to see if they could get more movement into their day and the effects it had on how screens affected them and their physical health. And I just think, the body, you can't rush it, right? We can speed things up with AI. But all that efficiency is actually not great for our physical health. The word friction maxing is big right now. I think I'm all in it. I think we need to talk more about the basic things that humans need in order to maintain their vitality and well-being, even in concert with the extraordinary technological capabilities.
So that's the physical health part of it. But Dr. Elahi, what do we understand about how using AI to do more and more of our everyday functions, whether it's crafting an email or making the grocery list or what have you, affects our cognitive function?
So what Manoush just said is what I don't want to think about. I'm always behind a computer. I'm always sitting. If you ask my husband, my ideal life is to be there and for food to be brought and taken away and exercise to be injected in my veins. So that's why I don't want to think about it.
Same.
I think of AI as offloading cognitive functions that are not helpful to achieving human potential at its highest form. So if you think about the calculator, it did not destroy mathematics. If you think about writing, it did not, well, maybe it did damage memory. But do you need that good of a memory?
Well, I mean, I'm a menopausal woman, so my answer would be yes. Others may disagree, but
So what's really interesting is that the brain is, 2% of the body weight, but it uses 20%. I don't even know that that's totally accurate, but a bell-shaped curve. So it's really a powerhouse of energy. And in fact, I think when I write grants, I lose weight. So that's my exercise. But, if that energy is used cleaning data sets and doing things that AI could do for me better, faster, accurate is still sort of questionable. I think there needs to be checks and balances. Then what can I do with my brain? And I think it comes down to limited intelligence, right? So we all agree AI at this point is limited intelligence, and there's a lot of talk around general intelligence. I don't know if we're going to achieve it. I mean, I think probably yes, because I don't think we thought we would have limited intelligence, limited AI. But do we want that? I think that's more of a question. The fun part of my job is the general intelligence. In fact, people in my lab do better on the limited tasks than I ever will. But the fun part is to sort of connect the dots, to think about what we don't know yet. And I don't think AI is going to take that away from us. Now, I'm a fully grown brain. So I did not grow up during the era of AI. I think we need to really think about the developing brain or the young brain. I was an expert in my domain before I was able to access these tools. So I get to choose what I offload, and I have the schema in my brain. I'm a little bit worried about how brains are going to get shaped when offloading some things is really easy. So I think as a society, we need to think very carefully what our brains really ought to do. What do we want them to do?
well, Joanna, that makes me wonder about your experience in that year of really leaning into AI and what sort of behavioral shifts you noticed for yourself as you were leaning on AI to do more and more of your daily tasks.
Well, I think it's really interesting because was really doing this AI maxing last year, and I think that a lot of the world started catching up this in the last 6 months, where I often do hear a lot about the cognitive offloading and the feeling like, yeah, I'm not sure I know how to do that thing I used to know how to do, but now AI just does it so quickly, and so yeah, I don't do it anymore, right? And I think I remember how to do it, but it's like it feels like really hard work now because AI used to do it so simply for me. And so I experienced a lot of that last year. I was using AI in a lot of my work and helping make the book. I'm very clear AI did not write the book, but helped make the book. And of course, I was testing out all these AI colleagues and all these things, and got to a point where I was like, yeah, I'm not sure I'm doing a ton of thinking here right now. And I have rules in the book about how we can get away from that. But I think that that is how a lot of people are feeling now, those that are really been using these tools.
So we're clearly at this point of friction and tension where we're trying to figure out what and how we want to use this technology. But Dr. Elahi, you're the director of ICON's Glickenhaus Center for Successful Aging. And I'm curious to hear from you what opportunities you think AI presents in better understanding and treating some of the cognitive breakdown we see in the aging brain. Like you laid out very clearly for us your concerns about the developing brain, but what about the aging brain?
Yeah. So I really like to take a lifespan perspective on brain health in general because the brain that we are in our 30s and 40s really started getting built as children, adolescence and young adulthood. And I think the same goes for older ages. One of the things that happens is that the brain starts degenerating. Whether we present with deficits that get diagnosed as cognitive impairment and ultimately dementia is really a question of how far we're pushing our brain and how early we're going to detect those deficits and what we call normal aging versus disease relevant degeneration. So my view, which is not shared by the field at large, some agree and some don't, is that we can lose some functions, and we will. Memory is one of them. Recall of names is another one. But we're also acquiring wisdom, which is about efficient use of our brain. And when that starts falling apart, when the executive function starts falling apart, judgment, sort of frontal lobe, top down, that's when I start worrying about someone more than weakening of memory. Obviously, if memory is pathologically weak, then it's another form. And so how do you slow that down? By precisely understanding what strengthens neuronal networks. Another issue in society, and I think this is going to be really problematic because we live longer, is the age of retirement. So the data is irrefutable. When people retire, I mean, some people retire and have like 3 other jobs lined up. But if you retire and then vacation for the rest of your life, you will decline more rapidly. And that probably has to do with the fact that we actually are getting a lot of unpredictable input in the brain. So similar to being on a treadmill or weightlifting, things come at us and the brain needs to juggle things. It's not programmed brain activation, so to speak. And some of it is cognitive and a lot of it is social. So one of the things that all my patients ask is, do I need to learn a new language? Because people are aware of this data. Do I need to do Sudoku, et cetera? And really my response is you need to be active socially and cognitively. And that's what I worry about more than the cognitive activity. I think there's plenty of cognitive activity that older individuals can do by themselves. But that social interaction sort of diminishes as you go along. And when you develop cognitive impairment, it diminishes very precipitously.
Are you seeing a point of friction in this idea that AI actually pulls us further away from one another? And I'd love to hear all of your thoughts on this. It creates more separation between fellow humans. And if it's taking on more of those day-to-day tasks, I think it was Manoush saying like, oh no, it was you, Joanna, saying like, do I remember how to do that? So are we sort of preemptively making our brains function at a less optimal level Because we're not using it for some of
It
these
doesn't need
tasks.
to.
Okay.
I think what I'm saying is that the risk is real. Absolutely. We can offload too much and we can offload things that are actually helpful to our brain. So I think we need to think, the thinkers in society and ourselves, like everyone needs to think very actively about what do we not offload to AI and what do we offload. I also think of it as a prosthetic. So if my memory is weakening, I can supplement it. I really don't need to have the periodic table in my brain. I mean, when I started my training, I remembered everyone's name. I remembered their patient identification. Was that helpful? Probably not. Like remembering the number assigned to someone's name, not that helpful. Remembering that they existed and remembering the important components of their life, next time I see them, how's your daughter? How's your dog doing? How was that vacation? That's helpful to the human connection. So I think it's about being smart about what we offload, use it as a tool, as opposed to this sort of completely unrestricted prosthetic. If I start sitting on a wheelchair, yeah, I'm going to lose my muscles instead of actually walking from point A to point B. But if I walk everywhere, I'm going to get exhausted. That's sort of how I think about it.
Joanna?
I have so many thoughts on everything you said. Makes so much sense to me, and a lot of that theme ran through the book last year. But I want to talk about outsourcing the brain, and we were going to talk about wearables, so I'm just going to go there. We're good with that, right?
Yeah.
We're going. One of the things I wore last year was a bracelet. I actually think I have it in the room, and I didn't wear it, but it was a bracelet that recorded everything in my life. Everything. I know we all think our phones are always recording. They're not. But this bracelet intentionally always recorded everything. It was called the B bracelet. And it connects to my phone. It goes to the cloud. It gives me a transcript of everything it hears in my life. It then shows it there. I can't listen back to it, so it's not as creepy as you're thinking, but it's still pretty creepy, I know. And then it gives me a to-do list based on the things I've said I'm going to do during the day. Because I say I'm going to do a lot of things. My wife is sitting here front row. She knows I say I'm going to do a lot of things, especially around the kids in the house, and I don't do them because I kind of forget, right? And I write about this in the book, and I say I felt like I had an outsourced brain, that I had outsourced my memory to this bracelet because I could forget to do things, and then I could come back, and AI had already summarized everything, given me a to-do list. And in some conversations, there's an example in the book I write about, a guy came to the house, we had flooding in the basement, and he's talking, and I'm like, I don't understand anything coming out of his mouth right now. But I didn't grab my notebook to take notes. I was just like, oh, my bracelet's got it. My AI bracelet's got everything, right? It's gonna tell me later. And I told him I abide by the two-party consent of New Jersey. And so everywhere I went for the year, not always, I was telling people my bracelet might be recording. We can talk about the privacy issues, but I think this is just so clearly, like you said, we have to decide what are we going to outsource? What are we going to feel okay with when there can be a bracelet on our wrist that could be our memory or our brain?
Well, it makes me think of Tressie McMillan Cottom is a sociologist at UNC Chapel Hill. She's also a New York Times columnist. And I heard her speaking about how tech companies have very convincingly at this point, I think, convinced us that AI is inevitable. And if they convince us of that, then we will do the work of adoption for them. And what I hear from a lot of people in my work is this fear that AI is happening to us, not for us. And Manoush, how are you thinking about the amount of autonomy we have in this adoption process, or don't?
I'd love to just follow up a little bit on that and bridge to that question. So I keep thinking about how before the 1850s and industrialization and big cities, nobody ever said, I got to get into nature, right? Like nobody said that because everybody lived in nature, right? There was kind of no reason to say that. And I feel like I see that now, like people are saying, it's a big trending topic. I need to get bored is a thing on social media, which I was a little early to that party of getting bored. And I think we're going into like, we need to get movement. If my parents had said to me, like, did you get movement today in the 80s? I would have been like, what? And so I think we're having to name the things that are getting crowded out by technology. My mother is a tiny little Swiss psychiatrist in her 80s, and she always says, but does she have a social life? And I feel like that's what we're saying here. Like, is there connection? Like, you're here at a conference. You could watch the live stream, but you're not. You're here in your body because you get information in so many other ways through, the body language and who you're sitting next to and the person you run into and the serendipity that there is. So in terms of your question, like, is AI happening to us? I think it's, people want to say, don't do it, but it's not like smoking, right? You quit smoking because it's bad for you. Tech is just so nuanced. And I feel like right now we're using the AI to blanket everything. Whereas, we're not going to even use the term AI, I'm guessing, in 5 years, right? Like, no one says like my digital devices anymore, right? So we see the language starting to change, the way we talk to each other. And I think, it is the wisdom of older people who understand, like, it's annoying to hear like back in my day, but actually that's really helpful to say that to it. And I hear from younger people who are like, they feel like they've lost out on a lot of things. There are a lot of teenagers I know who are just like, this stinks. I am going to have a flip phone and I'm going to go meet my friends in person all the time because they feel like they didn't get it yet. And so there's this constant recalibration that seems to happen.
Yeah. Joanna, I mean, especially after your year of AI maxing, what do you think about the amount of control each of us has over AI being integrated into our lives? And I'm thinking about, for instance, the Google search. If you've done a Google search of late, you will see they have integrated AI. You have to deliberately opt out of that. You can add a minus AI when you do your search to not get that AI summary. But if you don't know to do that, then it's just part of the experience.
Yeah, I talk about the AI invitation, where we're inviting it into our lives, and the AI invasion, where we just don't have control. And some of it is like what you're saying. There's AI and generative AI being blanketed in all of our apps right now. Google, Meta, you can't even use anything without an AI, Meta AI pop-up coming up at you. But then there's also what's happening in the world around us. And one of those places is certainly going to be self-driving cars. You may decide, I never want to get in a robo-taxi. I never want to get in a Waymo. But the car next to you is going to be a Waymo. It is going to be a robo-taxi. And so that is going to impact your life. It's going to impact our roads, and have a panel on that a little bit more tomorrow. Same with robots, right? Robots are going to, or industrial robots and all different types of physical AI are going to come into our own world. And so, and would love to hear your point on this too, in the medical field. AI is being used behind the scenes now. I have a big chapter in the book about how AI interpreted my breast ultrasound and my mammogram. It would have done that anyway if I hadn't gone out and reported that. That was happening behind the scenes at Mount Sinai. And so there are these places in our lives that we're just going to have to understand that machines are in control, or machines are guiding a lot of what's happening.
Dr. Elahi?
I can't wait for more AI in the medical field. I mean, I think it's happening, but I'll give you examples. I was a resident, so I'm a physician and a scientist. And during residency, I don't know why this always happens, there's a transfer of a really sick individual from one outside hospital to yours at 3 a.m. Super sick, super critically sick. You need to get on top of it. And there's this much documentation that you need to browse through inefficiently, sleep deprived. So I think information synthesis in an accurate way, that is definitely within the reach of AI. So not going in someone's chart for hours to figure out what their past journey looked like, that's something that can be offloaded to AI. Having a script of that interaction that you have with the patient, yes. So I've actually tried it. The problem is that for neurodegenerative diseases, it's not that good yet. There's still that aspect of what matters that it doesn't grasp, but it will, right? It just needs to be trained. So I think it will make us incredibly more efficient. But at the same time, what I do worry about is the human interactions. It cannot replace a doctor. But then so, this is said all the time, like physician who uses AI is going to be better than a physician without AI, and it's definitely going to be better than just AI by itself. But then you get to spend that human interaction time with the patient as opposed to being typing behind your computer, which really should never happen again.
But you said this is in reach, so that says we're
No,
not
I think
there
it's
quite yet?
happening. So it's already implemented in some care settings, and I think as it gets better and better, so radiology is already using it. A radiologist still checks it. You know, you have your checks and balances, but I think as it becomes better and better, it will become a tool that is going to be implemented in all care settings.
But we do know that as it exists right now, the technology is not without its flaws. And so, Dr. Elahi, especially when you're talking about using this technology in a medical or scientific setting, what role do you think researchers and experts should play in training these models? Because right now, LLMs are being trained by any variety of people. So how would you like that to be structured for it to have the best outcomes in your field?
They need to train the models. We need to find the best in the specialties to train those models. I don't know if there are any radiologists in the audience, but I never read the radiology read. For what I do, I'm not looking for tumors. I'm looking for those subtle changes that I've seen over time that worry me about a pattern on. I can train a model to do that. Probably more accurately, maybe on days where I'm tired or stressed, and my eye is not doing as good a job connecting to the brain and pulling that out. But I think you need to, so I guess really where success comes down to is who is at the table training those models? What are the perspectives that are integrated and what are the ones that we miss? So we need everyone, including patients.
So from a regulatory perspective, what do you think that should look like? Do you think we need more regulation at this point?
We do need more regulation. We need really smart regulation. I'll stop there.
Well, Manoush,
Yes.
I'll let you pick it up then.
Regulation? That's where
Uh-huh.
I'm supposed to pick it up?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, it's so depressing, Jen.
I know,
mean,
I
come
know,
on.
I
Like all the
know.
tech CEOs marching to Washington to kiss the ring. I just
But again,
yes.
I think it gets to this place of whether this is happening to us or for us. And so how do we push for the type of regulation that will protect? Because listen, this technology is out there. It's not being used by, just the experts in any given field. We all have access to it.
We do. I want to believe that consumer choice and action makes a big difference. For example, during the recent Pentagon sort of kerfuffle about not using Claude and switching over to OpenAI, we did see people like, on social media, I'm not using OpenAI, ChatGPT, I'm going for Claude. I mean, that was like a hot minute.
Mhm.
I think at the end of the day, Americans in particular have been conditioned to pay for convenience. That is what we like, and it's what we do. And we need smart public leaders who understand that regulation is not to give them a pass necessarily, but it is to just protect the consumer. We need consumer protections. And you know better than anybody else, that has been just like decimated in this administration. So we have some building back to do, I think, in the coming decade. I'm concerned that it's too late.
I mean, Joanna, you alluded to privacy. I mean, if we're turning more over to artificial intelligence, that means that it has more access to our personal data. Even the way Google's talked about how it wants us to interact with search and really having more of a conversation with the search box, which means you're inevitably giving it more information. What privacy questions does it open up for you?
Huge privacy questions. But what I think is really coming is similar to that bracelet experience. It's a really good parallel. And we can talk about these glasses too, which are the meta glasses that have cameras in them and microphones in them. And people are going to be wearing far more of this type of technology. But let's talk about that bracelet for a second. I was giving up a ton of my personal privacy there, right? I was recording things all the time, maybe private conversations I didn't want. It's going to the cloud. They tell me it's all encrypted and stored, but who knows if that's true. Yet, that's one side, right? The level of what I was giving was up here. But But on the other side, I had convenience. What was I getting out of that? And that level went up. I was getting a lot of use and convenience from that. And so these are the two sort of things that the tech companies look at. Here's your data. You're going to give us more. Well, we're going to give you more convenience and we're going to give you more service. We're going to give you more benefit. And so for me, was this worth it? Okay, I was getting these to-dos all the time, and got transcripts, and it was pretty useful. Now, I'm not sure I needed, I haven't worn that bracelet since last year, at least not. Sometimes I'll put it on for places I really do. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be in a lot of conversations, and I would like to not be taking furious notes. But it did. I saw that convenience, and that's the question we're all going to have, especially with these sorts of glasses, right? We're going to give up more data. We're going to give up the data of the people around us, but we might get more use out of them. We might get more convenience. This can whisper an answer to something in my ear. It can maybe eventually, talk about forgetting people's names. Give me the name of the person in my eye line, right?
I want to jump in here. I don't know if this is going to happen, but I think there is a consumer sort of desire coming for. You look so cool. Not at all. Sorry. I think there's going to be an interesting potential market use case for technology that helps you be more human. And I'll give an example. One thing that we saw in the study that we did was that people used timers, of course, to remind themselves to take these gentle movement breaks to get off their screens. But what we also heard was that by the end of the trial, many of them said, I didn't need my timers anymore. I awakened something called interoception. So interoception is the body's way of communicating to the brain about what it needs. You need a snack, you need to go to the bathroom, you need to move, right? They said my body started to give me, I heard it. I knew I needed to move. And so they got rid of the technology. So I used AI to go into, we had 20,000 people in our trial, and hundreds of people asked for an app that would help them do exactly that. So I used AI to develop the app. I got a coder. I don't know how to use Cloud Code, but he did. So there is an app if you want to use it. I haven't told people, but it's called Move Break. And my hope is that people use it and then delete it. Right? Like that this idea that you can use tech augmentatively to bring back the thing that you've been missing, sadly, because of the tech, right? So for this, I think it's about like that mind-body connection that you want to feel in your body. You know when you feel good. You don't need your Oura Ring to tell you. That data is helpful potentially in terms of medical treatments and knowing if something's going really wrong. But I think we want that sense of like, when do I feel most wonderful in my body? When do I, you come to Aspen and you feel it immediately, the crisp air and walking everywhere, and it's just extraordinary. And that's what being human is, right? That deliciousness of a day where you are in it.
Yeah. I wonder if there is a sort of flip side to what you're describing. And Joanna, you'd probably be best positioned to answer this. Many of us, I'm wearing an Apple Watch right now. People wearing Oura Rings, we have all of this feedback about how our bodies are functioning. You need to stand up. You need to move around a little bit. You haven't hit your steps. You need to close your movement ring, and you can get to a point where if you, for instance, you left the watch at home, but you went for a walk. It's like, did I really get in enough steps? It's like you start to question.
That's why I don't wear mine anymore.
Right, but like you start to question whether it happened if there's not a digital record of it happening. Did I sleep well if my Oura Ring didn't tell me I had restful sleep?
I love that data, or it didn't happen.
Or it didn't happen. And is that, in your experience of that year really leaning into tech, did you start to find yourself sort of questioning your own intuition?
Yes, I would say that for me, using that data, getting that data was helping the experiment. As I started this conversation, AI is only as good as that data, right? So if we're going to get the potential, I think, of a lot of what you've been talking about on this side, we need more of that data. Now, I think that to push it back, we actually we've been gathering all this data, but it hasn't been all that useful, right? You're like, oh, I need to close the rings, or I need to maybe take some more steps. It's a simple pedometer. We've had pedometers for decades, right? Now there's the potential that we use that more. It unlocks more, that we have the personalized trainer, which I did test a personalized personal trainer AI personal trainer last year, and I hated him, to be clear. I absolutely hated him, constantly sending me reminders to work out. But I could see a day where that gets better because it has more data and it knows the 3 workouts I did that year. And it can use that to better form the next one. So I think that, Apple or Aura and all of these companies, they're working on that right now behind the scenes.
Well, I'm sure you all have questions for our panel, so I want to give you a chance to ask them. We have some microphones circulating, so if you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you. Right here, glasses, yeah.
I'm curious, you've talked a lot about how as individuals, we can choose or not choose to take the electric, robo-taxi or use the watch. But what about the situation that we're in where in government functions and in corporate functions, AI is taking over service? And this is something where we as individuals and citizens have no choice. Now I just personally had a situation with the IRS where there's no people there anymore and you can't call them to correct anything. Or, I'm sure everyone in this room has been on a loop where you're trying to call into a business or a corporation to get something fixed, and no, your problem doesn't fit within the menu. How do we solve this problem? This is, the IRS and calling a business is one thing. When these systems take over, courts and, judicial systems and penal systems and all of that, like, where are we really going here?
I mean, Joanna, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
Oh, sadly, I have no good news for you. On customer service, it's fully going, even more so. I mean, if you're lucky now, they have a couple of people in certain types of industries or in most industries, they have now moved to fully automated systems with a couple of people, if you're lucky, in answering some of those questions. As it moves, I think that was the first industry to really be disrupted by AI, customer service. When I was doing this reporting last year, when I would ask experts, like, what industry should I really look at when we're talking about jobs going to AI? What industry should we look at? And everyone tell me customer service, go there first. And so I did. I even worked at a customer service in a unit using the AI. But there's something positive in that customer service is a very data-driven job, right? Like you said, you fit into some of those things. Other jobs, and I think, in the judicial system and as you're talking more politically, it's not just data-driven. There's real human decision, real human guidance, the things that you really are talking about, the things you don't want to offload, the things that where the AI is not going to be necessarily the best tool there. So I don't have that much fear. Yes, customer service, yes, but as it moves into other types of jobs, we are so much seeing that the data alone is not good enough to do the job.
But I would add that there are people working really hard to make sure that like AI can fill gaps that there are. For example, Jen Palka, the founder of Code for America, has created a new sort of initiative. We're working with states and municipal governments to fill the gap. Why does the DMV suck so bad? Is there ways to use AI that take things that are not functioning in our local governments and upgrade it? Why should people have to wait so long to get their disability payment check? So she and a lot of other people are working really hard to use AI in places where hopefully it can improve experiences where, there's just not that much money in it. When it comes to customer service, I don't have a lot of sympathy for those.
I think this brings up the point of empathy and the core of the human emotions and how good the models can become to emulate that aspect. It's maybe a trainable thing, maybe not. I think we'll need to really figure it out. But it's really front and center in the medical system, in the services, in all of the human interactions. I think the intelligence can be trained. It's sort of logical, rational thinking. But where you break the rules because there is a higher order reality that you are going to put above the sort of 2 + 2 = 4, that I think is where the frictions will be.
Yeah. Other questions? Back here?
Hi, Thank you guys so much. My name's Sophia. I'm an undergraduate student. I want to become a physician one day. And I think a lot from the lens of health equity. And I wonder, as AI becomes another tool that, like you said, we hope to integrate into medicine further, I think about those who already have a large distrust of the United States medical system and how might another very complicated area that we might, AI, we might add to medicine, complicate people's relationships and understanding and trust in medicine, in their providers, and is there ways to use AI to combat health inequities, or will it create another health inequity?
Dr. Elahi?
I think so. I mean, I'm an optimist, but I think one of the problems that we have is access to healthcare and information, and pretty basic information, actually. Some people wait, I mean, our wait list is way too long, and we're actively trying to find solutions, but so much of someone's workup and diagnostic journey doesn't need me. And all of that can happen in a way more equitable way, I think, if the tools are good. So you bring up the floor, basically. And then the really strange cases have a bigger chance of getting to see the specialist because all the other problems have already been solved. So that's my take. I think it's actually going to increase equity as opposed to the contrary.
Other questions? Right here on the end.
Thank you so much. Wonderful panel. I think a lot about the fact that economists tell us that humans are really, really bad at knowing what will make us happy. And we are really keen to avoid inconvenience and friction and inefficiency because of negativity bias, but actually none of those things are particularly harmful for our sense of well-being. The things that really, really can push us to the edge are loneliness and meaninglessness. And so what I see in AI is a whole bunch of things completely oriented to that kind of top-level shallow desire to reduce frustration. And in so doing, they are likely to massively make it more difficult to reach the things that we really need for flourishing, which are deep relationships with other people and a sense of meaningfulness. Are we, and really outside religious traditions or really robust philosophical traditions, I don't know where we're seeing the spaces where we can hold fast to those truths and make the kind of choices that we need to really help us flourish rather than just reduce our frustration.
Manoush, I think you brought up this question of friction.
Yeah. I mean, this is a conversation I'm having with my 19-year-old a lot, who's a freshman in college or going to be his second year. He's like, what am I doing? Is it good that I'm going to college? And this kid, he was like talking about death of a salesman and the desire of generations to improve upon the previous generations. And I was like, well, my hope, and obviously we do not know, but there is an optimistic take where there's a shift that happens in society where we actually begin to value the people who provide the truly human services, teachers, nurses, caretakers, those people, that personal, that human touch. I hope we can begin to value it the way we have not valued it over the last, half a century. And I would just add that, like, I've been talking a lot to educators, people who work with teens, and we hear a lot about teens and screens, and this idea that finding the tech companies in some way will fix things. And they say to me, like, we actually don't necessarily think the screens are the problem. The problem is that kids don't have anywhere to go after school. They don't have stable adults in their lives. They don't have mentors who care for them. So there is another coalition. I love them. They want to funnel the tech money, if those lawsuits actually go through, into programs that will systemically help young people. And hopefully, not to say that social media and there aren't awful things on there, but it's not that simple. We have to look at society as a whole.
Joanna, your thoughts really briefly?
I think it's important that we look at that idea of we are grown adults and have gone through life knowing friction, and we know how hard work can pay off, right? We haven't had AI there to take those steps, to take those shortcuts through our lives. We know how it feels on the other end, right? I know how writing this book, which was absolutely so much hard work, I know how it feels when it comes out and it hits the bestseller list, right? we have a generation, like you're saying, growing up now, that can use so much of these tools to circumvent the hard work. But to be optimistic, and this is the same thing I've seen of this generation coming up, Gen Z, even what is
Alpha.
Alpha. Well, I went to my alma mater and went back to college for a semester. I really only went to a few classes. It was actually similar to college for me. And met with a lot of students who were saying, we feel that. We also know that we're not working sometimes when we're using these tools. And I felt really optimistic by this generation that's saying, we recognize and we want to rebel against some of that.
So that as we wrap up here, I would just love each of you to leave us with a question you want us to ask ourselves as we're continuing these conversations about the future of AI. Dr. Elahi?
What do you want your brain to do?
That's very straightforward. Joanna, what about you?
Do I need AI to do this for me?
Manoush?
What do you want to feel at least once a day?
Oh, good questions. Well, Manoush and Joanna will be signing their books.
Yeah, what's yours, Jen?
Oh, gosh. I've asked all the questions.
Yeah, that's true.
I think my question is, oh, wow. That's hard. That's hard. Yeah. No. Well, I prepared you all to answer. I think the question for me, is, can a human do this? Can a human do this? That's my question. Okay.
Thanks,
Get your book signed. Thanks, everybody. Joanna, Dr. Elahi, Manoush Samarodi.
Thank you so much.
Oh, that was great. That was fun.
amazing.
Thank you so much.